Sorry about that, I don't know what happened then. Right, can everybody hear what I'm saying now? There's nobody here now. Right. Right, can you hear me okay now? Brilliant. Okay, so I'll start again because I didn't even connect a microphone, being a noob to this. So everything I was saying previously, I think, just fell on deaf ears, and well, deaf ears, no ears. Nobody was listening. Right back to the beginning of everything then. So this is the first stream I've done for an absolute age. I've set up a whole new template for it, so there's every chance things might not go right like the sound at the beginning of this. So I may have to kind of tweak and adjust as we go through. But yeah, basically the stream today, what I'm going to be doing is sculpting the model of Alenor, the Elven Sorceress. Alenor is a art piece I had commissioned by Dio, who's in the chat at the moment, some time ago now. Actually, it was quite a while back. I was developing a game called the Adventurers Guild, which is going to be a tabletop roleplay game. She was going to be one of the player characters for the game. So as it happened, the demands on my time kind of like changed with COVID and everything else going on. My time had to be focused more on the sculpting because I had less of it, because of having the kids around and everything else. And I'm running lots of commission work at the moment on the side of the Patreon and the tribes. So there's a whole load of stuff that I want to be doing that's kind of had to be put on the back burner, and unfortunately the game is one of them. But I am currently working with a few other people to kind of do various different games. So they will all kind of like, you know, come together and they'll end up being used at some point anyway. So I thought at the moment, whilst I've got all these lovely drawings that are all sitting in my desktop gathering digital dust, that I'd put them up on a stream and sculpt models so you can see what's going on. And that way, normally when I sculpt straight out of my head, so there's no reference to view. It's I'm concepting in 3D, so if I don't like something I make, I just scrap it, throw it away, and rework it until I do like it. So obviously that isn't great viewing for other people who want to see what the design is supposed to look like, because there's no answer to that. It's supposed to look like what it looks like when it's finished, if you like. So I'm going to use these. So you've got a starting point. I haven't made anything for this model yet. This is going to be completely from the ground up. So once these models are made, they will go onto the store and they'll be available for sale. But I've got a good selection of these guys to work through. So once we've done one, we'll do another one, and there's different sculpting techniques that can be used in the different drawings based on the different what do we call them, like the textures and things that are included in them. So this one here, she's got a bit of fur, we've got some cloth, there's a little bit of armour, a bit of wood grain going on the staff, and obviously hair and fire. So there's a few different things to tackle. Pose isn't too challenging, which is nice. I'm not spend too much time doing posing on. I'm going to remove her from the screen. I'm going to put her on my second screen so you guys won't be able to see her. But she's there for reference for me. So you can currently see my Zbrush window. So I'll give you a quick orientation of Zbrush as you're seeing it now, for anyone who isn't familiar. So this is a custom interface that I've set up, so out of the box it doesn't look like this. So there's certain functions over here that I use for exporting models, so or preparing models for exports when I'm creating an STL. So we have pre-process, decimation, and import STL. That shouldn't even be there. Export STL and the Y scale. So when I start the scene, what we'll be doing is, the first thing I will do is, I'll do it now actually, I'm going to load a tool, and I'm loading a tool called 32mm scale female body. So this subtool here, when it loads in, we've got a body, we've got a 25mm base, a 100mm ruler, and a head. So the different parts of this are all interchangeable. I can remove them, I can switch them out, I can sculpt 10 different heads and change them onto the bodies if I want to. So it's easy to kind of customise and to maintain by keeping things separate. When I do work, I'm going to be using a stylus. So if you see me in the window in the corner, I've got a pen here, so I'll be drawing straight onto the digital display. So the screen that you're looking at is my Loin graphics tablet. So you'll see me sculpting on there. Also, you won't see what I'm sculpting, you'll just see that I am sculpting. So first thing I'll do, I'm just going to draw this out into the scene so we can actually get a model in there. Change it to edit mode so I can actually work on it. And I am going to get rid of this god awful red wax. Switch it out for basic material. This is the one I prefer to work in, just because I like the way it looks. I'm going to hide the ruler, and for now I'm going to hide the base because I don't need those in the scene. I'll leave them in there for a second just to explain it though, because basically this ruler is perfectly scaled to 100mm. The base is perfectly scaled to 25mm, which is a standard tabletop gaming base. So this base mesh from the foot to the eye line is 32mm tall. So this gives us a 32mm scale miniature when it's created. If I do 10 different items in this scene, 10 different characters in this same scene, using this one ruler as a scale to come back to, everything will scale perfectly. Even if they can all be the same size, they can be different sizes, but everything will scale at 32mm scale. The base is useful for when you're posing, if you're doing like wide stance poses, where the feet are going to be quite far apart. You don't want to be doing it to the point where the feet actually no longer fit on a base and you have to use a larger base. So it's good to have the base in the scene just as a cross-reference, just to be able to check that the feet actually stay within the confines of that 25mm diameter. Okay, so I'm going to take them out now. I'm going to remove the base and the ruler just because it's a distraction I don't need. For her, because she's an elf, I think I'm just going to scale the legs up a little bit and then take it to the knees. I'm just going to bring my widget down. I'm going to bring it to the line where the knee is, where I've masked off. I'm just going to stretch the legs down a little bit. Now obviously that has just made her a touch taller. So if I put the ruler back in, put it at her feet, she's now like, what's that, 33mm scale. So I'm just going to go and take the head, merge the head into the body. I'm just going to take this whole thing down just a tiny amount. Just to bring her back into scale. There you go. She's 32mm scale, 32mm again, so she's not going to be exceptionally tall. She's going to be human sized. Okay. So now I'll take the ruler out again. So there's various different layers of clothing to build upon her here. So we've got, again I'll just bring it down, I'll just talk through my thinking process on this. So the first thing I'll do is probably the the robe in the underlayer here, and the trousers. So we'll get those roughed in. Then we'll get the boots made up because they're fairly form-fitting. The skirt will be one of the later things we'll work on, followed by the fur trim, and then the armour parts will be probably the last thing to go in. The base mesh, just quickly talk about that. So the base mesh is one I've used for a while. I have a couple of different base meshes that I'll use for male and female, where I've got the anatomy proportioned how I want it. Obviously I'm doing this as a job, so this is my, you know, what I do all day every day. There's certain shortcuts I'm going to take, and most professionals will be in the same boat where they're going to economise the time to make things, you know, use the workflows a little bit better. You may see me occasionally start with a pre-made item, so a sword or a shield or something like that I might bring in from another model that I've made before, and then I'll customise it and change it and adjust it to suit the needs of this particular figure. It's a time-saving measure more than anything else. You'll see lots and lots of people online doing videos going, I started this from a sphere, I made it from a cube, and look what it is now. And that's great, but in a professional workflow you just don't have time to do that all the time. So use a pre-made base mesh all you like. Just make sure obviously you customise it enough that, you know, none of the base mesh exists at the end, and you're fine. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with using reference material, resource material, you know, third-party items and stuff, as long as you're customising them and using them in a way that still makes it yours at the end of it. So you'll find if people are importing objects and textures and things from a third-party artist, that's going to be visible in the end model unless they've really worked at customising themselves. So most of the things you'll see here are things that I've made. I may use occasional insert meshes and things that have come from third parties, but again, ultimately those things all get customised and sculpted and tweaked so that at the end they are all part of the model with a consistent visual. So first thing I'm going to do on her here is the face, I think. Let's get the face insert. Let's get the face insert. Let's get the face insert. Sorted. Right, stupidly I had Twitch open in another window, so it was reverbing the sound back from Twitch, so hopefully that's resolved that now. Okay, so I'm going to start sculpting the face. So again, I'm going to get my reference material, I'm just going to zoom in on the face, make sure we get it all right. So her face is quite slim, obviously she's an elf, so split the body away from the head so we can just work on the head isolation. I'm going to turn my sculpting tool on to clay build-up, which is used for kind of bulking things out. I'm going to put the sculptress mode on. Now sculptress mode, if I just show you the topology of this, the larger squares is what Zbrush will give you when you decimate a model, when you Dynamesh a model. So if I just click Dynamesh now, you'll see what high resolution is. Let's do lower resolution. Do a low resolution, Dynamesh, so it gives us that. Can't sculpt on that, there's not enough points in there to be able to kind of get good detail. So I'm going to use the Sculptress mode. Now if I just smooth this in Sculptress mode, you'll see it's creating geometry on the fly. If I make the brush size smaller and I do it again, we've got a really, really dense set of points coming in. And it just means you haven't got to worry about it too much. Now periodically what I'll do is I'll re-Dynamesh the model, and that'll just restore it back to a decent resolution to work on. Now that's too small for what I need, so I make it decent size. I'm going to turn the lines off because it's not helpful to see the grid when I'm sculpting a face. I can turn the polygroup off as well because I've only got one. So I'm just going to make a few markers on here. So we've got the nose, nostrils, got the mouth. If anybody's got any questions about anything, by the way, feel free to pile them into the chat. If I can demo it or at least talk through a response, then I'll quite happily do that. Just mash the lips in. Now when I'm sculpting this, I don't know if anybody's ever watched Bob Ross, but what I do tend to do is lots and lots and lots of kind of quite light strokes. And there was a catchphrase Bob used to use. It was 2 hairs and some air. Obviously I'm not using a paintbrush, there's no hairs involved, but that kind of, that's the kind of the light touch I'm kind of using. I don't want to be applying, if I press hard I'm going to do that, and I don't really want to be doing that unless I'm really looking to build up some volume fast. So for the most part I'm using quite light touch to just shape the face how I want it. So I'm going to switch to all cracks, increase the intensity a little bit, and that will let me do like linear cuts. So that would be perfect for the mouth. It would be if I shortened it a little bit. I'm going to invert that by holding Alt. I'm just going to edge out the lips. And then I'm going to come in with H polish, which is a tool that people generally use for hard edging. I use it for everything these days because I'm looking for a stylized visual. I'm not looking for something that's photorealistic here. Photorealistic is not good for miniatures. If you want to be able to paint a model, you need to be able to exaggerate and stylize a little bit. So I'm using H polish to sharpen up the edges and lines, make things look how I want them to look. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on the where the planes change. There we go, that looks suitably moody of a mouth. Just bring the corners down. Here's another one as well. I use the move tool a lot to just nudge things. So they're very small, very slight movements. Nothing really massive. And you'll see the line here is a little bit wobbly, and I'm okay with that. It's going to be this big when it's finished. So actually the mouth, in the most part, isn't going to be incredibly visible. That little wobbly line you aren't even going to see. So when you're sculpting, don't worry what the render looks like. The render is not important. The important thing is the actual model at the end. Although I say that, people are absolutely buying renders for the most part these days, because I don't actually think a lot of stuff that people buy gets printed. So they get sold on a nice jazzy render, and then don't then go on to necessarily print everything. Okay, so I'm going to use the All Cracks brush again with the larger size and a smaller intensity, and I'm going to use that to do all these bits of the face here next to the mouth, just to shape them in. And I'm going to go back to my clay build-up just to shape it how I want. There obviously is a large element of this is experience, and also kind of like knowing things like facial anatomy and, you know, where various muscles sit, and kind of looking at people's faces. You can't really teach that. You need to kind of, you know, practice it and just kind of do it. I'm going to cut some very crude eye sockets in. Just take out the top of that, just feather it out a little bit so it's nice. And then the cheek, the top of the cheek, I just want to take the edge off there. Right, now that is a very manly looking face. Oh, hi Terry, thanks for joining in, mate. Good to see you here. Okay, so I'm just going to just reshape her face, give her a more pointed chin. This is an elf after all, let's make it look like an elf. The nose is definitely too fat and chunky. So yeah, I'm just going to bring the nose back in line, take it up a little bit at the tip. Yeah, you can't do everything from just one angle. You've got to move it around a little bit. But again, ultimately, by the time you're painting these things, the fine shape of the nose that you spend ages refining is kind of lost on the end model, especially once there's a coat of paint on it. I think one of the things a lot of people are kind of getting hung up on at the moment, we've got 8K printers coming out. A lot of people are kind of like cramming detail into there just because they can. One of the real arts of miniature sculpting is kind of knowing when to stop. It's not a case of how much detail can you get onto a model, it's how much detail should you get onto a model. And for me, I like to work on a kind of a 70-30 kind of ratio. So I want at least 70% of the model to be areas where you can do a little bit of painting. You know, you can do some blending. You can. The nose is huge. You can do some blending. You can do some, you know, some nice gradients. You can do a little bit of freehand type things. You know, that kind of stuff. And then the last 20% is like detail areas, so like things like your face, you know, armour trims and things like that. And at least that way, you've got a nice balance to the model. Because if you find a model that's covered in detail from the top to the bottom and you look at it, it kind of, I don't know, I find it jarring. It's a little bit like there's too much going on. So again, I'm just switching to H polish to just polish up some of the planes. So where two planes of the face meet, you can kind of just get a nice sharper edge to it. You don't want to do that on every single thing, but again, it's a stylised character, it's an elf. Elves, they tend to have sharper features. Do you know what, can I just, give me a second, and what I'll do is I'll just put the, so that's the face we're working on again, but I'm just going to just put this in a little overlay in the corner of the screen. So give me just a second. obviously talking about this, sculpting this model, it'd be nice to for you to be able to see it in the corner. I'm trying to remember where I put the things now. There we go. You're not feeling Blender then, Terry? It's a tricky one. Blender's very good in that it's free, but it's definitely more challenging because it's such a varied tool. You can do so much in there. There we go. Is that visible enough for everybody? Can you make her out? Okay, so this is the face. This is the face I'm just trying to make now. So I'm looking at. We've got a sharp plane kind of here. The nose is quite ridged, maybe like a softer tip on it. Cheekbones, cheeks are quite flat in actually. Good stuff. Yeah, her cheeks are in. They're not too pronounced, so she's got quite a soft face. It's quite a hard shape, but her features are quite soft. So let's just try and work that. The lips are not right. Nose, I think. So again, I'm just using the move tool here. I'm just going to nudge everything around until I get it looking kind of how I want it. Use the smooth tool to take out some of the harsher brush strokes. And again, I'm just going to nudge the nose ridge in. And I'll switch to my H-polish tool. I'm going to H-polish the outside of the nose into the cheek there. Okay. And then I'm going to start refining this eye shape a little bit now. So I've gouged in the sockets. Just going to hack in a very rough eye shape because this is not the eye shape I need. And I'm going to use this mesh insert dot. Just pop a couple of eyeballs in. We'll recess them quite far back. Now, again, with eyeballs, eyes on a model generally, if you were sculpting a photorealistic model, you could do this with more photo reference. What I'm doing here, you just need a little bit of instinct, and also realise that the model itself is not big, so all of these details here, they need to be exaggerated or they're not going to be seen on the end model. So I'm going to bring, just going to have a top eyelid in, and then the bottom one I want to bring up this way. I've got the eyes masked off, the actual eyeballs themselves are all masked off, so the spheres are not going to get affected. I'm just working with the bit that is in the white colour. So Alenor has got quite almond shaped eyes, so the corners are tapered and the insides are wider. So I think they need to be further apart. truth. So I'm just going to move them a bit. If you move them from the front, it's a good idea to move them from the side as well. And then you just have to clean up any kind of dodgy geometry you create, polish it out and whatnot. So I'm just going to switch out there. I'm just going to make the eyes bigger actually. That should do. Okay, let's get the lower eyelid back in. Bit of polishing in again. Right, now that is too close to the eye, so if you can see that little ridge, when the model prints, that ridge is going. You're not even going to see the lower eyelid, so you need to bring it out a good distance, otherwise you are not going to feel the benefit of any of the effort you're putting in. Orb cracks. Don't use the cut tool. There's a knife tool I've included in Zbrush, and it's like a killer. It'll literally just nuke the whole program with no warning whatsoever. I'm just going to go and polish the top surface of the eyelid, and that will help to create a bit more of a sharper ridge. And then I've got this. I mean, she looks old now. She looks like she's a bit haggard and worn because we've got these real big bags under the eyes. So I'm just gonna come in and buff those out using the H polish tool. So I want to take away the recess. I still want the plane change there, but I'm going to do it using a hard surface rather than the soft one that was there to start with. We're going to just do the front as well. We've created this kind of ridge there. I want that gone. Same up here. Let's smooth this bit out. Plane changes I want, but I don't want a real sharp, harsh ridge. Okay, there. So it's getting there. It's not perfect, but it is getting there. Okay, so a little bit under the nostril there. Her jawline is still too low and too wide, so I'm just going to raise that. Oh no, let's undo that. I don't want this concave when it goes in. I want it to be fairly surface, fairly level on the surface, not any kind of big dips or anything. Smooth that chin out. Okay. And alright. So I need for her, she's got quite large. I'm going to turn the sculptures off for a minute because the sculptures tool being on is great for creating geometry, but sometimes it's a little bit too jarring when you use it because you can't get a sharp edge. It kind of wants to pixelate the ridge. So if you're trying to get a nice sharp edge, it doesn't always look, you can see it just there actually, that line. If I want a sharp edge, the best thing to do there is to Dynamesh. In fact, I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to polish it down. I'm going to put groups on, because if I turn this on here, you can see that this is called Polygroups. So each different colour is a different mesh, a different object. If I turn groups on my Dynamesh menu, which I think I've now obscured with the picture of Alenor, there's an option there that says groups. There's an option called polish and there's an option called project. So project will take the details that are on the mesh, reduce the mesh size or increase the mesh size, and then try and like push the mesh back into the shape of the original one. So that is the way you keep the exact proportions and the exact detail you've sculpted already when you Dynamesh. Groups basically Dynameshes each of the polygroups separately, so every different colour is its own mesh still. So if I click on one eye, I can isolate one eye. If I Dynamesh everything as one piece, I'll no longer be able to do that, but if I leave groups on, I can still continue to isolate the parts. So I'm going to do it on 680 resolution, and I'm just going to click the Dynamesh button now. You can see the eyes have just changed colour. Everything is now a little bit sharper because of the Dynamesh. Now I'm not using the Sculptress mode now. So Sculptress mode is the mode that does the dynamic tessellation, is what we call it, where it creates geometry as you sculpt. I'm just going to start using the Dynamesh as that's on there. So, and again, if you're doing stylized figures, one of the things to use to your advantage is the polish tool, because you can rough things in quite quickly, make a good shape, and then you click polish, and it'll kind of create a more stylized look to what you're doing. And if, like me, that's your kind of thing, you like that, then you can use it to your advantage. So she's got like a little alternate corner of the mouth, which is missing. Okay. I'm just going to bring her cheeks down, I think. Buff this bit out again, just change that angle of the plane with a bit of H polish. So when I'm polishing, so if you just use polish normally, you're going to get it's kind of removing material, so it's creating dips and dents. If you hold the Alt key, it goes the opposite way and it'll start building it up. So when you're polishing, what I tend to do is I tend to alternate very rapidly between the two modes. So I say you don't want to build too much up, you don't want to take too much away, I just want to kind of get a sharper finish to the surface. Thank you, Pointy Paints. Thanks for joining. So yeah, you don't want to be over polishing or taking too much material away. So, and it's particularly useful for when you're doing things like swords and things like that. Because I used to use Blender for making weapons. So I'd sculpt this. I'd model the sword in Blender and then bring it back in. And then over the years, I suppose I've just got better and more confident using the polish tools and like the hard surface functions in Zbrush. And I never come out of Zbrush now. The whole workflow is just contained, and it does make it easier. But I've got a move topological one here as well. So where I've been isolating the eyes. Oh, cheers, Dio. Where I've been moving the masking the eyes off so I don't affect them. If I just want to move things, what I can do is the move topology will just use. It'll just affect the mesh that is active, that it's actually selected. So it won't actually affect the eyeball mesh, that'll be left alone. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that now. I'm going to put an eyebrow in for her because that will help create a little bit of personality and, you know, stop it looking quite so plain. Because one of the things we're not going to have on this is like pupils and irises, so you don't really get the idea of the character's personality until it's painted up. Which I mean, Terry's in here now, Two Guns Painting. If you go and check his painting out on Instagram, Terry, if you want to throw your link in there in the chat, feel free. Terry's a fantastic painter. He's painted quite a few of my models in the past as well. He's always done a cracking job, and it's brilliant. Like I say, for me, the sculpt is, you know, it's what I do, or my contribution to the art for you guys. But then you can do so much with it once it's painted as well, so you can kind of customize it and make it your own. And it's always nice to see how people treat them. Now, one of the other things I will say as well is kind of 90% of the sculptors who are out there at the moment who make miniatures, they're not hobbyists, they are sculptors. And a lot of the guys, they're making models that are not miniatures. So, you know, you can't paint them. Some of them aren't printable, and some of them, if you try and game with them, they're just going to break up into pieces. So, for those of you who know me, you'll already know this. Those of you not so familiar, I've been like painting miniatures since I was 5 years old. I'm 38 now, so that's like 33 years of painting miniatures. I've probably been sculpting models for about 20. So I've been playing Warhammer, Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, Mordheim, Warhammer Quest, Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing like all sorts of games for God, the best part of my life, really, all of it. So I'm coming at the sculpting side of things, not from somebody trying to create a pretty render to sell it. I'm literally trying to make models that I'm going to enjoy painting myself, and you know, that I can play games with. So my son, who's he's 7, so Jacob, he's really getting into his kind of D&D at the moment. So we've been playing a lot of Zombicide as well, you know, getting into all of those kind of miniatures games. And he's getting really enthusiastic. He actually, I don't know if anybody saw it, but he did make a miniature that's in my web store. It's the Beholder. You know what? Let me just grab it and give him a little shout out because he'll be jealous. But he did this this little Beholder guy. Just going to bring him up to the camera for you. So this is Jacob's Beholder. So he actually sculpted this in Zbrush, and I 3D printed it for him, and then he painted it. So this is in my web store at the moment, and anybody that buys one, I've told him that he can have the money for it. So if you do go and buy a Beholder, it's going straight into Jacob's money box. Encourage him for future projects, and you know, make another little artist. So yeah, so I'm playing games with the models. My son's playing the games as well, so I've got to make them so that they are robust enough that they can be handled by kids as well. You know, oh, what was that? What was the ding? Ah, thanks for the follow. I didn't see that come up on the screen then, because I've got the that's better. can split screen. I didn't realise I could do that. You learn something new every day. Just turn this off. Okay, so just profiling the face, shaping it all. Let's give her an eyelash as well, because make it look a bit more feminine. I'm going to use the Orbs Crack brush. I'm just going to take a line across here. And I'm just going to build it up a little bit with the Sculptress mode on. Now you can see that doing weird stuff there just on the side. You need to be really careful of these little artifacts when you're sculpting, because when you try and print, these are the kind of things that will create mesh issues that you won't even notice are there, because that was such a small tiny area that will cause a problem in a 3D print. Let's give that a little kick up at the end. Now this is going to look mega rough, but it doesn't need to look sharp and crispy, because the size of this when it's actually on the model is minuscule. You can spend an awful lot of time polishing and refining and making things look, you know, super crispy, but ultimately again, print it and see what comes through, and then you'll realise where you need to spend your time and your efforts. Okay, we're going to put some ears on her, because what's an elf without the ears? So I'm just going to mask off this area. Do you know what, I really need to save this as well, because Zbrush is a nightmare. Zbrush is a nightmare bit of kit for just crashing out on you at no moment, at no notice. Okay, well, thanks for joining in, Pointy Paints. Pop the link into the stream here, and I'll give you a follow as well. And I'll tune in and catch up with you later. And Terry, thanks for that, man. He'll appreciate that. I'm going to be doing ChillCon again as well. So I don't know if we've got any UK-based guys in the stream at the moment, but if there's ChillCon in, I don't know if the next one's going to be Derby or Sheffield again. But we did ChillCon in Sheffield very recently, and it was a great show. We had a real buzz all day long. We never had like a quiet minute for the whole day, which was absolutely brilliant. And we met loads of cool people as well, it's always nice to speak to people. And one of the regrets I've got for that is I had that little pink beholder as a good luck charm sat up on the cabinet, and so many people were asking about it and just wanted to buy one, and I didn't even think to bring them along. So next time I do a show, I'm going to put Jacob's money box up there with a pile of beholders, so people can come and buy them. So thanks for that, mate. Let me just open. No, I won't open it now because I'll kill it, but I'll come back and grab that in a bit. Okay, wicked. Good luck with your stream anyway, man, and also I'll tune in and catch up with that later. Right then, so I've got the ear masked off, or where the ear's coming from, about halfway back on the head, and I'm going to use a tool called Snakehook with the Polygroup tool, the Sculptress tool turned on, quite a large size, and I'm just going to drag it out this way. Reduce it down a little bit. This is going to make it all sorts of manky as well though, so this needs lots of cleaning up. this is the this is what happens with that tool though. So switch to move. I'm just going to use a small brush size with the smooth tool, and with sculptress mode on, that helps to kind of polish out some of this horrible texture. It's been created. And inflate behind the ears because, again, it's a miniature, it needs to be printed, it needs to be painted, and I don't want wisps for ear rolls. So I've got a big bulge in the middle there of the ear, which is not what I want, so I'll take that back in. And I'm just going to bring the lobes down a touch. Again, just nudging from different angles to make sure I get the design. If I need to unmask it, so I can kind of get to the rest of it. Okay. So, let's get some ear texture into there. I'm just going to pull up an image reference of an ear. Okay. And again, it's not the end of the world if it's not 100% anatomically correct, because it's, again, so small when it's printed, you aren't even going to notice. You just need somewhere for your ink to run, and a little bit of a ridge for your highlights and whatnot to pick up. So I'm just going to push these back into the head at the base. Keep the points and there we go. Okay. Right, so you'll notice I am using Symmetry as well. So Symmetry is one of the godsends. So before I sculpted in digital media, Zbrush, Blender, etc., I actually did used to sculpt with green stuff. And this is going back a long time now. I think it was about 2010, I switched over to digital. So before that I was doing everything using green stuff, Procreate, not the iPad app, there's a putty called Procreate, which if anybody does any sculpting on miniatures, if you're customizing or converting anything, it's very similar to green stuff, but for me I always preferred it. It was just a little bit more difficult to get a hold of, and it's been so long since I bought it, I can't even tell you where to get it from. But at some point I may do a stream doing a bit of traditional sculpting again, do some conversions on some models if it's something that people would like to see. I'll give you a little bit of instruction on that as well. So you don't have to do everything digitally, you know. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay, now that is better. But for me, I still feel like it looks a little bit more goblin-y almost. Kind of reminds me of the Hobgoblin from Spider-Man, so something's not right. I think the mouth is too big, potentially. don't think I've got the right nose. The nostrils are coming up too high. And the tip is a little bit too high as well. So, bring the nostrils up at the back and then sorry, I'm mumbling to myself now because I'm just trying to figure out what's not right. It's one of the things when you're doing converting something from 2D to 3D. If you've got multiple angles, it's a little bit easier. But obviously, when you're just working off a sketch, it's rare that you've got all sides covered. So you've got to try and turn from the one view you've got to try and create the 3D, which kind of means making up a load of detail that doesn't exist in the drawings. Now Dio's images are great because he kind of everything's practical in them. But I have worked on a lot of people's work where the drawings are great, but they're quite conceptual. The atmosphere's there, they look amazing, but they're just not necessarily thinking about, you know, how armour's worn, how it can move. They're drawing it or illustrating it in a single pose, for example. So you need to kind of think about, you know, how is this armour going to move in battle. And obviously that's an oversight that can happen quite easily. So I've just taken out a bit of detail that's under the eye, change that up a little bit, change the angle of the eyebrows up a little bit, turn it back into more. Out from the middle because that's, I think I'm starting too close. Okay, that is looking better. Top of the ear is too fat, so I'm just going to thin that out. There you go. Perfect. And I've got a little wobble there that I just need to correct. Right, I think I'm happy with that. Just bring it forward a little touch. There we go. Okay, right, let's turn all the other tools back on. So she's got a head now, which I may need to adjust again later, but for now I'm going to adjust it straight away, because I'm just going to... That was it, the eyes were too far at the face. Right, there we go. I think I'm good with that. He says going back into making a change. Beautiful. Okay, so next thing to do, I'm just going to zoom out on my image a little bit that I've got on the second screen. Right, so pose-wise, a pose is quite good for sculpting because it's actually quite static. I'm just going to isolate the arms on this with 2 hands, mask off the body, and I'm just going to position my little widget. It's actually called a widget, that's not just me not knowing what it's called. It's called the Zbrush transpose widget. So I'm going to rotate her arms down, and I'm just going to rotate them around a little bit. So we've got one arm will be back, holding a staff, the other arm is going to be the other arm will be forward holding a fireball. So I was going to get them into roughly the right pose to start with, and it'll make life a bit easier for later. Legs, again, I can do the same again here. I'm going to do them symmetrical so I can sculpt on both of them at the same time, so there'll be a little bit of posing to do later. But for the most part, the pose is quite a static one on this one, so I'll keep doing that. Okay. So what do I need to do? Okay, so when I sculpt a body, what I tend to do here now, I'm going to duplicate the whole body. So I've got the base one, which I'm just going to rename base. So base. Let's call it body. I've got a second one which I'm going to call clothes. So what I will tend to do here now is so the head I can't sculpt on because the head's on a different tool. That's isolated from this. I've got one body over the top of another body. So I think if I put this on, you might be able to see it a little bit coming through. This is just Polygroups again. But what I can do is, so she's got these braces on. So I'm going to isolate the arms. The braces match on both sides, so I can do the same thing on both. In fact, no, that's not. No, I'll save that one for a bit. Let's do trousers first. What's going on here? Some weird artifacts in the base mesh there, just like to take off. Okay, so is that on? Okay, so so she got some like loose fitting trousers. So again with I'm just kind of sculpting some mass now. Keeping the original body underneath means that I'm not going to accidentally carve in too far and misshape her legs. So she's got spiky knee pads, and then she's got boots that are coming up to just over, just below her knee. So I'm going to take, and I'll come back and I'll adjust this once the boots are on anyway. And I'm just using clay build up, just bulking up some of the legs. Going in the opposite direction now just to smooth it out a little bit, because again I don't want to use the smooth tool too much, because the smooth tool does soften all the details and loses all your definition, so you've got to be a bit cautious on that. Do a little bit of polishing again. Right, polishing works a lot better without the sculptress mode on, so even if you're using sculptress mode, it's a good idea to turn it off once in a while. Don't know why, it just doesn't polish as well or as efficiently. And I don't mind some angles because, you know, we're dealing with cloth. I'm going to sculpt a little bit of drapery in there, a bit of movement in the cloth, but we want it to be quite controlled and quite defined. So if you ever look at any Games Workshop models with like capes and trousers and things like that, you don't find all these like, you know, mini micro creases and things going on. You'll see like bigger areas, and the reason for doing that is, again, it comes down to the painting. It's a stylisation thing to make sure that models are nice to paint. So I'm going to take a crease round, high up down to the knee. I'm going to run another one across the back of the knee, in between, and I'm alternating here between cuts and ridges. So I want ridges and I want cuts to kind of create this cloth look. Okay, it's important that you do both. Otherwise it looks a little bit odd. Okay, so I'm going to call that a wing for now. This bit at the back here is going to be covered by a skirt, so again, I could sculpt it all, but again, when you do production models, sculpt the bits you need to. Economise and save your time for other things, but you want to focus on the areas that are going to be seen in the end model. Okay, that's tea that's over an hour old. That's stone cold now. Okay, so I've got the trousers on the clothes. What else needs to go on the clothes? So I'm going to do the top, I think, underneath the kind of corset belt, and then she's got this one sleeve that comes up on the right arm. So I'm going to turn symmetry off for a second on the right arm, on the right arm over here. I'm just going to sculpt that little bit of cloth that I need, a little bit of material. So again, it's from the elbow up to about 3/4 of the way up the bicep. The braces finish just before the elbow, and then the elbow pad looks like it's coming up, a bit like the knee pads. I'll do like a little bit of asymmetry on a model. It's nice to have symmetry on there, but I love some asymmetrical details. It just makes the model a bit more interesting. So I'm just going to smooth that out a sec. You see the white bits coming through, that's where I've smoothed it. And, you know, when I was saying about smoothing, it shrinks the mesh. So the smoothing is actually it's taking the surface of the model down a little bit, so the base model, that is the body model, is starting to show through. Now, when you have two surfaces that are very close together like that, you have to be a bit wary that when you come to merge them all together at the end, it can create like a weird surface pitting. So you just need to control that. Expect it and just smooth it out when it happens, but I don't know if there's a way of stopping it other than just removing the geometry you don't need. So again, I'm using the Orbs Cracks brush. Now, if anybody's getting into Zbrush, Orb Cracks is one of the brushes I use most often. It's one of my most useful tools, but it's not actually standard in Zbrush. You can pick it up for free if you just go to Gumroad or CubeBrush or whatever else. Just do a search for Orb Cracks brush and you'll find it. It's available as a free download. I think the guy that created it has like a little donations page, so if you really like it, you can do what I've done and give him a donation. Well, I can't remember the guy's name, unfortunately, but very, very, very useful tool. There we go. So a little bit of sleeve done, and then there's a gold ring trim around the outside there. So. Do I sculpt that in or do I insert it in? I'm going to insert it. I'm going to append a cylinder. Let's bring it up. It's going to shrink it down. Sculpt scale it in portions, rotate it around. Let's make it roughly fit first. Get it kind of in place. And then shrink it to fit. Right, and obviously it's not arm shaped, so you know, arms aren't cylindrical. So I'm just going to use the move tool there just to nudge it where I want it to go. And I'm not doing any massive movements. I really don't want to be pulling it and, like, you know, changing its shape too much. I definitely don't want to be warping it and wiggling it around everywhere. And one of the tricks you can do actually, if you're using the move tool, if you hover over the model and then hold Alt and move, you'll move it backwards and forwards in line with the plane of the model, the plane of the mesh. So for nudging shapes in and out without actually, if you want to kind of keep it as a consistent band, not being all up and down and undulating, that's a good method to use. And I'm just going to come back to the cloth again here because the cloth is now quite tight to the band, so I'm just going to carve a little bit out there just underneath. So again, when we put the paint on it, get a wash in there, you can get a little bit of detail picking up that, separating that band from the metal bit, from the cloth. And then for the band itself, I'm just going to go to, because again, this one is a straight, what do you call it, a primitive shape. So it's a simple mesh. If I turn the mesh lines on, you'll see that that's the grid we've got, the grid pattern. So if I just divide that a few times first and then delete the lowers, you'll see it's created more geometry there, smoothed it all out. And that's fine, I'll leave that as it is there. Okay. So we've got that, we've got the trousers. We're going to come into the vest top. So again, I'm just going to kind of isolate the. I can't see it because I've. There we go. Okay, so I don't need to worry about anything below the waist. In fact, anything below here is going to be unseen. So it's kind of the line where the ribs are here. So, right. Good. Get symmetry back on just for these bits. Smooth that out. I've got side boob going on this one, so she's got a full vest up to her armpits pretty much. So we don't want any actual anatomy showing through. Let's get the sculptress mode on. Help me smooth all this stuff out. I'm just going to add a little bit of mass just to separate it from the body mesh underneath. And then now again, she's got a little mini cape thing around the shoulder, so we don't have to worry too much about the back of her. Let's get some of this detail filled in. Again, you know, we're not looking at the anatomy on this model. It's not going to be a feature in the final piece, so we can clear it out. Okay, so now I'm just going to go and do the it's like a herringbone kind of pattern. I'm going to use the all cracks. I'm going to crank the volume up on it. Volume? Intensity, even. And I'm going to go for here. Let me just turn on lazy mouse radius. So lazy mouse is a cool feature in Zbrush. You find it in other programs as well, but it just means that the brush action lags behind where the cursor moves, and any kind of wobbles I have along the way get normalised out, so it lets you kind of sculpt straighter, smoother lines. It does behave weirdly at times though, so you do have to be a little bit mindful of it. That's as far as I need to go with that. And then the corset top underneath is going to kind of do this, I think. So it's going to come from about there. It's going to mask it out just to help me figure out what's going where. So tell you what, it's a bit nippy in this office now compared to what the temperatures have been over the summer. It's very much freezing in here. It's about 20 degrees, but it feels cold. No worries, Terry. Thanks for tuning in anyway, and yeah, if you're ever streaming again, or ever streaming your painting, just be sure to let us know, and we'll tune in. But don't forget to drop your link for your Instagram in the chat, because I'd love for some people to come and see some of the minis of mine you've done. Okay, so where are we going? Is that right? No. And if you guys want to see any more of Dio's work, the chap that did the illustration here, he does have an Instagram page as well, and I think he's on Facebook too. But you'll find his work in like the Paizo publications for Pathfinder, I believe, Cobalt Press. So he's done some really good work over the years, and I've worked with him quite a few times, and always a pleasure. He's a busy man now though, so he's off the market for a little bit. I'm just trying to figure out this now, the details. They're only minor details, but and they won't all show up. So again, you don't want to make too much work for yourself. But right, now doing this is always tricky because you see it from the front. and you come into the back bit, and then suddenly everything changes. So what I tend to do, I would tend to put a seam in the back. So drag the cursor down, hold shift, move it down, let go, and it will carve it in. Well, that's a bit deep there, so let's not do that. Ain't no worries, Dio. Mate, if you want to post your links in the chat, feel free. I'm going to do a quick mesh extract on that mask bit. What this does is it will kind of pop out. Yeah, a bit too much. It'll just pop out the bit I have masked. Now, anytime you do an extraction like this, one of the dangers you have is if you move this too far away from the body and you end up with a hollowing in the middle, you'll create a pocket. If that pocket is accessible from any of the edges, as in you can see it, and I'll demonstrate now, but if I take here, for example, and I bring it away, now you see they've got this gap here, right? That gap down there now, that extends all the way through the mesh. What will happen is when you come to 3D print it, you're going to end up with a very, very fine area that resin cannot escape from but will not be cured in. So you're going to end up with a little resin pocket. It's not going to be able to drain out, you won't be able to clean it properly, you won't be able to cure it, and what can happen, depending on how big the resin pocket is, the wet uncured resin can react adversely with the cured resin and cause the models to split. So you've got to be very, very careful about those little areas. So, top tip for avoiding them, isolate the external geometry, we delete the hidden geometry from the middle, and we close the holes. So now instead of having a wraparound, we've now got a solid object that's going to be kind of sitting in situ on the model. And that avoids any complications with hollow areas inside the model, which obviously you don't want to be there. And there may be some hollow areas you do want to be there, but for the most part we know we don't. So okay, I'm just going to use that Alt and Move function again, just to get a little bit of separation from the base, body, and clothing. And then see how this is all gone all pixelated and horrible. Thanks for posting that, Dio. If anybody wants to go and have a little mooch at Dio's work, give him a follow. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. Oh, and congratulations on the recent marriage as well, Dio. The wedding photos looked amazing. Looks like you had a great time. Okay. So what I'm now going to do, I've got to unhide the hidden bits again. I'm going to keep groups on, keep polish on, and I'm going to Dynamesh at a fairly high resolution. And that's going to give me a little bit of... It still looks awful at the back. Oh, I've still got... Might need a higher resolution than that. Oh, hasn't done anything, that's fine. Clear your masks first before you try and Dynamesh. Dynamesh done. I'm just going to go back in with my old cracks. I'm just going to redo these back lines, re-establish them, because the first time I didn't know it was pixelated and awful. Put my ranges back up again. And again, the shoulder bit is covered by a mantle, so I don't need to worry about dealing with shoulders, basically. I'll just leave them off. I'm going to worry about sculpting all the bits up there, because we've got the shoulder mantle will do the job. Okay, so next bit. Let's put some more of these little details under the back. Little tangent cuts. I'm going to go in a kind of a brick pattern for this, I think. Feels right. Now there are times when I would actually weave this in and out. If I was doing a larger scale model, I'd probably put a weave on here. But for this one, I think I'm just going to cut it in, keep it simple. We're going about halfway up the blocks, and then cutting across. Now up here I haven't done it all because this is where I'm going to cut the armhole. Reminders keep popping up. If you hear that little beep beep in the background, that's Amazon telling me I've got a delivery on the way out. I wish I could tell you it was something interesting, but it's just a timer to make sure the kids brush their teeth for 2 minutes. The joys of parenting. Right, let's just masked off the area, so I'm just going to unmask around where the arms are. This is just my guide. This isn't Hey Craven Horde, how you doing? Thanks for joining the stream. Apologies if you're watching, by the way, and I haven't given you a shout out. I've tried to say hello to everyone as I pop up, but I'm not necessarily seeing everything. It might be my fault for not doing it right, but I will learn. Okay, so I'm just going to use the clay build-up tool just to roughly gouge out this. And again, one of the key things to watch out for all these kind of things is to make sure that you're not creating things that are going to cause problems on the printed model. So don't do anything that's going to cause any pockets, any areas that are too thin. You don't need loads of hollow stuff. We certainly don't want any like internal geometry going on. So I'm just going to create just a trim around here just to neaten off the edge. There are loads of ways you could do it, but again, for a miniature, I'm just going to rough it in here using the clay build-up tool. Get it roughly how I want it, and then in a minute I'm going to polish this, and all of that roughness is going to disappear. So I'm going to do a Dynamesh again, re-Dynamesh, re-polish, and job's a good one. Okay, so let's do that now. Let's reveal all of the other stuff. Let's polish. There we go. So it still looks a little bit rough. So I'm just going to go in there with the H polish tool now. I'm just going to smooth that surface off. Also, you could use curve tools and stuff like that, but hate using them things. They never join up properly at the end. Right, here is a little thing I'm going to show you, because this is a anomaly that you get sometimes with them. Right here, you've got a couple of holes appearing in the mesh. This is where it's basically like a single pixel wide. You try and print that, it's not going to work, it's going to cause you problems. You need to catch these as they happen. So I'm going to just put the sculptress mode on for a second, because that'll just polish all of this stuff out quick. Let's do an in there as well. So if you get these kind of things, the best thing to do is use the inflate tool, re-inflate over the area. Because the reason they're a problem is because they're like 1 pixel wide. So re-Dynamesh, go back into them, and then again we'll treat them as we were before. We'll just polish them out with dynamic tessellation turned off. Okay, so again, some of the ugly shapes and the dodgy ridges and stuff we've got going on, you can buff them out using the polish tool, polish the side using a smaller tool, just reduce the brush size down. And then on the top here, it's going to go round. Again, I don't want to go too deep on this, because this is just where the arm's going to go into it. If you go too deep and do any undercuts inside, that's where you're going to get the resin traps again. So we want to avoid those resin traps. I do tend to do a final pass once the model's posed and sculpted and everything else, and just go through just looking for those things. It's worth spending that little bit of time just to try and catch them if you can. Occasionally I'll miss one, find it while I'm doing the sports, and then have to go back and correct it. It's annoying then, but it's another way of finding them, just in case you miss the less obvious ones. And again, alternate between adding and subtracting when you're polishing, and that will help to kind of maintain your shape. This top bit again is going to be under the mantle. It's not the shape I would like, but you're not going to see it, so I'm not going to spend any time on it. And it's always worth thinking as well, I know I mentioned it earlier about the painting side of things. Can you get your brush into that space? If not, you need to try and fill the space with something. Because if you can't get a brush in to paint it, it's pointless. Okay, liking that. So next thing I'm going to do is like a, what do you call it, like a tabard or something like that? Is it a tabard? It's like the loin cloth that comes down just here on the, I'm pointing I'm pointing here and you can't see what I'm pointing. Let me bring the image down and show you. So next thing I'm going to do then, we've got the loin cloth here, and we've got this comes up behind the corset top and then pops up the top here over this bit. So I'm just going to sculpt that going up to there. Do I bring it down the back as well? No, I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to put it back at the back. I'm just going to leave it at the front. Okay, so I'm not concerned about the bottom bit. The actual loin cloth I will deal with later. But for the tabard, I do want to add that now. So I'm going to do this as an extract. So I'm going to come up here like this. Alright. Yeah. From there, I'm going to mask off these areas. Back of the neck. I don't know why I'm coming around the back of the neck. I was going to say it cuts off here because of the thing again. But there we go. I'll come down here. I'll stop there. Actually, no. I'll go all the way down. I'm going to take it to the crotch there, and at least that way I can just drag it out once it's ready. Okay, let's do an extract again. Accept, and well, this time I can't hollow it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to isolate just the internal side. I'm going to go to the middle of it, and then I'm going to shrink it and pull it in, and then widen it back out again. Okay, so that's created some depth where it wasn't before, and it's also mashed up the surface. So I'm just going to polish that with the Dynamesh on, and then I'm just going to come in with no dynamic tessellation or anything like that. Big polish tool. I'm just going to sharpen up the manky geometry here. It shouldn't affect anything, but it's worth cleaning up anyway. And then this bit on the front, I'm just going to tidy that. And then here, I'm just going to smooth in, and then go. So there is the front of her tabard. Now there is a little detail on there which is like a little gold band around the outside. So I'm going to just add that using a cut, a simple cut. From about there. There you go. Just try and make sure you keep an even distance all the way down. And I'm just going to go up that cut again just to sharpen it and whatnot. Okay. So let's get her back on screen. So that's what she's looking like at the moment. So we've got the top done. We've got the tabard, which I'm just going to push behind the corset there because I don't want to add too much mass with the corset. Then we've got the corset, which, well, I'd say corset, belt, corset, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to come in and give that a bit of a polish and shape it now. I didn't do that before. So whenever you do what I did before with this, where you you delete the internal geometry in the close holes, you always get this weird stuff around the top. So you just go over it, just give it a polish, smooth out the edges, and just try and create the shape, the outline, the shape you want. Now again, it might not be that easy to get. Go lightly with the tools, and you can do it. But you can always give it a nudge using the move tools if not. It's like, got it? Like here in the middle and the back, it's a bit too high for me. So I'm just going to use a decent sized move tool. I'm just going to nudge it down until I'm happy with it. I'll nudge it up actually, so I'm going to take it up to there. And again, remember, it's going to be viewed in 32mm scale from 3 foot away for the most part. So, you know, don't be overly concerned with trying to make it perfect. It's the overall look is the important thing. do want to avoid is too much like bumpy surfaces, so polish, because those will show up when you start dry brushing and throwing ink washes on. I'm just going to buff out the abnormalities on that. You rotate it around a little bit, you can start getting a few shadows fall on it, so you can see, because the light comes from the same direction every time you ZBrush. If you don't, well, depending on how your matte cap's set up, how your material lighting is set. But if you use a standard material, when you rotate it around, the shadows help you to see what's where. You've got to kind of get used to thinking in 3D, looking at the shadows to give you the information you need. And I'm just looking at all of these areas, thinking like, you know, again, painting wise, what's going to pick up paint, what's going to take a highlight, what's going to take the shadows, where's the ink going to run to, can I get a brush into there. I'm not a massive fan of dry brushing myself. I do tend to prefer to like do a controlled stroke. So for me, if I can't physically paint it with a, you know, a fine brush, then I'd rather either leave the detail off or rework it. Right, this is a bit manky around the back here, so let's just address this. No one wants to see that. Well, no one's going to see it, but we don't want it visible. Okay. Right, here's a weird one for you. So I've just used the smooth function with dynamic tessellation on from Sculptors, and it's created a big hole there. So there must have been somewhere in here. There must be a break in the polygons. Right there, it's just torn it apart. If that ever happens, just do the close holes again. But that mesh, to anybody looking at it, oh no, there's the hole. There's me yapping on. Yeah, loads of holes. There's things like that that people miss in the sculpts, which causes holes in the models in your slicer package. So when you slice the models for 3D printing and it says there's so many holes in it, it's these little invisible holes that you can't see until you you do what I've just done and it opens them up. So I'm just going to go and close holes on them. Do a quick save again. Don't want to be losing any work. Okay, so that is trousers, top, tabard, mantle next. Yeah, why not? Let's do the mantle next. So I'm going to go back to the body mesh, and this tabard is the mantle. Okay, so we're going to go from the centre up and out. I'm going to go up the neck. And around the back. And then we're going to come down the back. I'm going to give it a bit of shape here, I think. There we go. Like that. Make it a bit more interesting than just being flatted off. Okay, so let's just invert that and extract again. Too big an extract, let's shrink that down a little. sculpting. I'm just going to delete the internal bit again, delete that, close holes, pop it back onto the model. That looks ridiculous, but we can deal with it. Okay, so we're going to bring the neck in with the move tool, holding the Alt key to push it in. I'm going to bring the shoulders down. That's just going to have to be polished straight out, and we want this kick up on the ends. So oops. I remember about that dynamic tessellation thing sometimes. I'm just doing what I've done previously. I'm just buffing and polishing and just shaping a little bit just to get the kind of effect I'm after. I'll remove this ridge from under it because I don't want to see that in the on the model because it just looks weird. So I'm just going to taper it in. So I just want it just like that. Don't want to go to a point or a ridge underneath the shoulder. So that's perfect there. And again, this is thinking about the actual model, like the final product. Right, now we've got something in the middle here, which is like a little crest piece. So I'm just going to cut that in. I'm not going to detail it yet. Here around the neck, I've got a shape on actually. Just going to bring this around so it's a more gradiated rise. Just polish it again. I'm just going to trim that in. Polish the colour up. I don't want this groove here, so that's going to get buffed out. Changing planes is fine. I just don't want a valley before the change. And that's not right. Looking at it from this angle, I need to nudge a little bit. And sharp lines what I'm after. Okay, looking at it again, we've got a couple of ridge lines running through, which is going to be a tricky one, trying to figure out where these are going to go. Start there, bring it down, and stop it, and then they're going to get into the back. And then at the front, you're going to a tapering, did I? Yeah. There we go. Okay. Sometimes if I'm doing details like this, what I'll do is I'll just come to the top edge and sharpen up by putting a raised ridge next to the valley. But if I do that, I'm always going to polish it out as well. So it's just using the the Alt tool, the Alt key. It brings the level up rather than taking it down, so it's not going to smooth it away. It is going to bring the new level up, and that'll kind of create like a stepping between the different ridges. One second, it's on stream. This might be my wife ringing me. That's what you need in the middle of the day, is a tea delivery. Right then, so the neck, how's the neck looking? Right, so we'll have another one come up here to the neck. So we'll take the neck down that way. Consistent, I suppose. Oh, now I feel like I should do the same on the back with the detail. Yeah, I've got to have one. Might be the most comfortable bit of neck wear, but it'll be design consistent. This is where orb crack fails you. This bit here, it's come round lovely and sharp, and at the end it's gone really, really weird. Because for some reason, whenever you get to the edge of an object, particularly like a sharp edge, it behaves bizarrely. I'm not quite sure why. So I just need a little bit of adjusting, a little bit of countering. But we can't deal with. Now I need a bit of depth at the back of this because we've got a bit of fur coming out. A bit of height and a bit of depth. A little cape coming out from the back, and we've got the fur, so we need allow for both of those. And then that little detail at the back of the neck is probably going to be hidden by hair, ain't it? Oh, actually, won't know. I do need to just bring the neck back a little bit. There we go. Brilliant. Oops. Okay, so the belt, I'm going to break that into 4 sections. So there'll be the side piece, the front piece, and then there'll be a back piece in the middle. So we'll have this kind of textured armour piece in the back, with the cloth wrap, and then we'll have the sigil on the top. So for that, I'm going to use a high intensity, large sized cut. I'm going to go from there, I'm going to go in, back out again. And then here we're going to do the same, we're going to go in, and then back out again. Now this needs some geometry because the resolution's terrible on it. So we'll do polish and do Dynamesh. And now, I hate doing this, but put that back on here. Smooth out these bits. And I just need to use the H polish tool. It's going to come into the middle of this, the inside of the cut. So again, the end purpose of this model is to be used as a 32mm scale model. If I'm sculpting a 75mm scale or 100mm scale, like the Barbarian Kickstarter, then I'm going to be using something that's a much higher finish to it, higher level of finish, because you need the extra detail on the larger models. On the smaller models, you can put the detail in, you're going to lose it all, so you're going to moderate it back. Just remember the scale is important when you are sculpting. You can't just take a 75mm model and print it out at 32mm and have it look like a miniature and function as well. Okay, so I'll go with that. I'm going to cut the detail trim around the outside. I'll raise it up. Yeah, so I'm going to sculpt it on. It's a raised ridge, just to give some height variation. There are lots of ways of doing this, but this is just for a miniature. Again, this would be the way I'll tackle it for the most part, just because it's quick, easy, manageable, and I know I can deal with it, and it's going to work for a model. it's kind of the same story. It's build up the forms, refine the shape, polish it out, sharpen up the edges, and check for mesh anomalies even. Polish, and then H polish the whole thing out again, just give it a quick whiz round, and that will just help to reduce any like unevenness that's created by roughing it out with a brush. Just carving the insides there, just to using the Orbs crack brush, just to kind of create that bit of distinction from the ridges to the base again. Now it looks like we've got some texture on the artwork that reminds me a little bit of like tree bark or something like that. Now, I don't know if I'll texture this up or not, so I'll leave it to the end and decide, but my gut is telling me not to do it, because it's quite a small area. But if I detail it with texture, then that's something somebody's got to paint. Now I just need to deal with this that is now visible again. So I'm just going to use the sculpting tool. I'm just going to sculpt it out. There we go. Job's done. I was going to deal with that little bit there, but I just realised it's going to be hidden in a second. So we'll put a Append Cylinder. So this is how I always do belts. Oh, cheers, Dio. Whenever I'm making belts, this is how I always do it. I never do an extraction because it's a faff. Take a cylinder, bring it over the model, position it where I want it, shrink it down so it's the right kind of size. Use the scale tool to make sure it's kind of an oval shape. Get it roughly where I want it to be. Get it to about the right size. And once it's there, almost there, switch to the move tools. And make sure your symmetry's on. And then use the Alt move just to fine push it into place. And there we go, there's the little cloth belt that she's got. override that a few times. Delete lower. Add a bit of geometry to Dynamesh and polish. And then I'm going to come in with the Orbs Cracks brush. I don't want 46, that's a bit too harsh. Just go for about 20, 25. Fairly small size. I'm just going to go and add a few slashes. Now, I don't want them all to join up. I want them to overlap and go in different directions. So I'm going to turn Symmetry off for this one actually. And invert and alternate. Okay, so imagine kind of doing like waves or, you know, like flowing water. That's the kind of thing you're looking for, that's what you're aiming for there. There you go. Now the only thing I need to do there is just soften that top line so I've got a real sharp edge on it. I was going to switch to the Trim Dynamic brush. Trim Dynamic just basically, it's good for taking edges off. So if I'm damaging armour or if I'm doing something like this, I use it and again just lightly buffing it and polishing it out. It just takes away the sharp edge on the edge. Of course the edge. Just takes away that sharp edge and means that I don't need to kind of worry about it looking like a machined part or a bit of armour or something like that. It's clearly going to be cloth. And to add to that even further, these little bits where it goes down, I'm just going to nick them in. And up, we're going to take that and we're going to just nick it over the top. And all that will do is kind of give it an effect of got a bit of twisted cloth. Just to break up the evenness of the whole thing. And then I'm going to put the Z intensity right up on the Orbs Cracks brush. Take lazy mouse off entirely. I'm just going to take that. Some of these little bits I just want to reshape. We've got a few little bits like this where it's crossing over, so I'm just going to come back in, I'm just going to use the move tool to bring it back out again. Just to make sure the various parts don't kind of interact with each other in a weird way. So there we go. Okay, so the next bit then. Do these braces. Right, what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to isolate the arm, and we'll split the rest of it away. Just the arm active, I'm going to go slice curve, and we'll slice it there. And now what that does is that's created a clean line through the middle of the polygroup. I've now got two polygroups that are separate. I can isolate one of them individually, or what I can do is I can do group polish Dynamesh, and now it's closed the mesh as a solid piece. I'm going to delete hidden because I don't want the top bit, I only want the bottom bit. But what I do want to see is the body layer. There we go. So put the body layer back in. I'll get my bracer that I've got. I'm going to use inflate on this. I'm just going to inflate it so it becomes a bit larger around the arm. And I'll need to cut it at the wrist. So I'll do another slice. There we go. Dynamesh and polish again, and then we'll just isolate and delete the bit we don't need. Okay. Now I need to H polish this because I don't want all of this muscle texture that I've got on the base model. So I'll take my sculptress mode off, the dynamic tessellation out, and I'm just going to inversely polish the recesses. You can use a large size tool for this when you're doing like large areas. It's a little bit easier. And circular motions when you don't get any kind of like buffing and burnishing rather than sharpening edges. So all this, you see how it's creating a ridge on either side there, so we've got this. So I'm just going to use the standard version of it, not altered. Just H polish that down. Again, circles across the ridge, small fast circles. There we go. Okay. Now, if we look at the wrist armour here, I'm inclined to follow the pattern that's on the boots here. So we've got this, again like I did on the back, it's kind of going down into a point and then coming back up again, and then the next one starts. So we've got kind of a dragon scale effect almost. So let's go with that then. So wrists, the detail that's on the cuff and the elbow end I will deal with afterwards. Or do I do it now? No, do you know what? I'm going to mask it off now just so I can do an extract and it's saved, so I don't have to try and work around the detail bits I've carved in. There's one and oh god, 1 and 2. Group the mast, and where's group mast? Group mast over there. And I'll just polish that. Better than doing an extract. And then I'll just inflate those bits. Polish again. Let's do that. Why is it not working out? Something to do with these edges. No, not those edges. That's too high resolution. For some reason, sometimes when you put that resolution on the Dynamesh really high, it turns your whole mesh into a big like point cloud kind of thing, and it looks horrible, and it ruins your mesh. It's unusable. The worst thing that ever happens is when you're midway through a sculpt, you do something, accidentally Dynamesh it like that, and then Zbrush deletes your undo history because it needs to save room, and then you're left with an unusable model, which is never fun. I'm just going to stretch this a tiny bit, so oh, that's not right. That's good enough. I'll stretch that a tiny bit just so it fills the gap a bit better between the ridges. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do the texture on this yellow part now. So we're going to go for like a down the middle of the back. We'll do this. Oh, that's a bit intense. 1, 2, 3. These and go this one. Let's do that again with lazy mouse on so it looks better. Now this is a tricky thing to try and do on a curved model. There's be a little bit of cleanup at the end, but it should be okay. I feel like this one needs a little bit of top here. Right, so that just needs a little tidying up now, because some of these bits are a bit rough. So what happens when you start and stop the lines midway through, they get different depths and all that kind of business. So yeah, I'm just going to come off this size. And again, a lot of the time I'd be tempted to do a weave pattern here, so I would carve this down so it looks like it's being woven underneath. For the purposes of this one, I know it's not necessary. Doing that's going to end up adding depth to the depth to it that we don't want. Someone's at the door. With the toothbrush timer. Yeah, the kids have just gone back to school this week, and the little one's trying to rush getting ready. Keep having to remind her to brush her teeth for 2 minutes. She keeps asking me to put the timer on my phone, which is great, but then I'm handing a phone over to a child that's trying to get ready for school, which is never going to be a good idea. So she's only 3, so it's not going to take a lot to get distracted on YouTube. That's done. So then we've got this kind of comes to a point at the. I'm gonna bring the point out at the wrist here, I think. So this particular bit of mesh, so drag that out here. And for these, we've got a kind of a. Let me just bring the image down to show you. So we've got this like ridge in the middle, so it comes to a kind of a pointed ridge around the middle of the bracelet cuff. So I'm going to take the mesh that I've got here now for the wrist bit. I'm just going to put an orb crack with a 35 intensity set. I'm going to go all around it, so I'm just going to put a ridge on the end there, and I will polish that just to get the point. And then I'm going to run the orb crack with the laser radius tool. I'm going to run it all the way around, ideally as close to the middle as I possibly can. I'm going to use this is the same way I would do a sword, by the way. If I was it's not the same way I do a sword. It's the same principle, except I'll be using symmetry to get the edge of the blade straight. So that wherever the symmetry plane becomes like in the middle of the mesh, you kind of polish up to that, and then that gives you a nice sharp edge. So for this, it's the same kind of principle, but I'm obviously using the ridge instead of the symmetry. So I'm going to run the polish around. And that on the other side as well. times where we have to alternate between building up and taking down, because the build up obviously is crossing over the side. It changes where the centre line is, if you're not careful. Go a little bit harder on the outside edge of this, so where it's got the hard edge, I want to kind of take that down so I've got a bit more of a taper going on between that and the point, and the ridge, sorry. Anytime you get a little pit like I've just had there, you can infill that with the H polish tool, just to hold in the alt key again. So the thing is, everything's undoable in this. So when you're sculpting, one of the things, same with painting miniature actually, one of the things you need to get used to doing is not being too precious over anything. The amount of times I've spent ages working on something could just go on, actually no, I hate that, and then just throw it away and start again. There may come a point when you've gone to a point, you've invested so much time in it, you need to kind of just step back and say, actually, that's just not going to work. And there's also a lot to be said when you're sculpting for reworking mistakes rather than just using the undo button. So yeah, we've got an undo button there, but actually if you can just take a piece of work that's gone wrong for some reason, adjust it and fix it, it's going to serve you a lot better in the long run, isn't it? Go with it. I was just thinking I should have lined that so that the elbow came into that line there, but it's fine, I'll work with it. So I'm going to bring this up and down, give it a little bit of shape, and I'm going to run a ridge across it again. That way, and then we're going to go this way around. Right, now let's get polishing. Using a smaller polish setting this time, so the brush is a little bit smaller, just to be able to kind of get into all the corners. again, I'm looking at the shape here, and I want to make sure that that edge isn't all wobbly. So if it is in any areas, I'm just going to take my move tool and just nudge it back out again. I also want to make sure it's kind of a consistent depth. So again, if just by eyeball, if anything looks like it's out, I'm just going to go back and adjust it. You can see I've got a wobbly line here, so I'm just going to move that down with the polish tool, just polish it down a little bit. So it needs polishing off. Straighten that bit out. There we go. And then I need to bring this out towards me a little bit. So because this was free-handed out with a mask, just need to make sure it's straight. Because I didn't do that with the mask. I didn't make sure the mask was straight first. Okay. Call that done. So it's a little bit of blue geometry out here. Repolish. Okay. Done. No, not done. So I need to bring that out a little bit. So we're going to create visible definition between the different areas, so they don't just blend into one when you paint them. No, I'm happy with that, I'm happy with that. The ridge is good on both ends. Brilliant. Right. Alenor is taking shape. Oh yeah, so once I've done that on that side, I'm just going to click mirror and weld, and that'll put the same bracer onto the other arm. Now on the other arm I did sculpt the cloth a bit, so I just need to just go back in and just adjust that here to make sure it fits into the make sure the cloth and the bracer edge work together. Follow that little elbow bit. Lovely. Okay. On this one now, I'm just going to go and take the top of the arm and the bottom of the arm and just slice them off. Don't need them. Okay, so I'll do a group polish again. Just take that and that, and this bit, and that. Yeah, this is the bit where the Zbrush crashes. Oops. So basically what I've done there is I've used the wrong tool. And Zbrush tries to do it anyway. It just doesn't like what I was trying to do. So now that they're done, I'm just going to delete those. Save it, because that little crash scared me a bit. Okay. So, we've now got Alenor done as far as I need to there. Do a bit of fur. I'll stop there. Do a little bit of fur. I'll do the fur. Okay. In fact, no, do you know what? She needs hair. The hair's bothering. Okay, so hairstyle wise, I'm just going to mask off a chunk of the head. In fact, no, forget that. I'm going to duplicate the head. Nice and easy. Get my symmetry on again. And sculpt the hair straight onto head number 2. What's that? Thanks for the follow, Parvis. So she's got well, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete the eyeballs, but I'm also going to scrub the face. We don't need it, we're not going to see it. Head 2 is literally just being used for the hair, so so hair wise, I'm going to rough in the shape of the hair or the direction of the strands using lines of clay builder. This will give me a little bit of texture to go in the direction I want the hair to be going. Okay. Once I'm going to turn this off. Once we get there, I'm going to change to my cheers, Dio. Glad you're impressed with it. I'm going to change to the hair tool. Orb cracks tool again. I'm going to turn symmetry off for this because I don't like to have these bits done symmetrically. I've got a bit of a flat head at the back here, so I'm just going to bring that out first. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a few hair strands. Higher intensity, smaller size. Now these don't have to go all the way back, you can pick them up in between. They'll just cut in on the first pass. And they're all coming back to the point where the ponytail is going to emerge from. So she's got the big plait ponytail. I'm going to bring that out from right in the middle of the back there. So it's going to be kind of like a mid-height, so following the point of her ears to kind of here, I suppose. So start at the skin end with a stronger stroke and then lighten the stroke as we go, and that tapers it to a finer point. Because the pen's pressure sensitive, obviously, as you lighten off the pressure, the line lightens off, or the intensity lightens at least. Now, I've probably done a few too many strokes in here, but you'll see what doesn't matter that much in a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is, and I might not keep this, I might end up undoing it, but let's see. I like that. I'm going to Dynamesh and polish it, and that'll just help to even out some of the strands. And then I'm just going to come back in, and I'm going to use an Alt tool just to add a few raised areas. Just pick out a few highlight strands. Don't need to do loads of these because you've already cut it in. You can cross strands here as well, but these you don't have to be bound by what's already there. Okay, so there we go. Right, now she does have a few braids down the side of her head. They're going to come up into this plait. So I might address them on a separate layer just so I don't screw this one up. Duplicate the head. Just going to take from here to there. Smooth out that ridge, and then on this side, mark it in where I'm going to go. I should have done this bit with symmetry on as well, really, in retrospect, but okay, so I'm just going to do that again. Let's turn the head back on so we can see. So let's come further down. In fact, you know what, I'm just going to mirror and mold this for a minute. Just in the interest of making life easier. I'll come back and add some asymmetrical details afterwards with the strands. I'll just redo some of the strands on. But I'm just going to start here, a downward stroke, and up. So, sculpting plaits and braids is tricky. There are brushes that do them, but I never like the look of the brushes. Okay, so once I've done that bit and roughed in the shape of the strands I'm going to go on, sculpt the strands in. To make sure it's all directional. I think my little one below would approve of this hairdo. I remember learning to do plats, making bread at school, and to do a plaited roll. And now it's coming in very useful, having a 3-year-old little girl who likes to have her hair braided. Okay, I'm just going to add a few tiny little strand indicators there. Just to give you the indication of direction. They may pick up in a dry brush for the wash, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world. Okay, I'm just going to take the ends and just fit them into the head. Okay. There's a bit too much protrusion on the sides here from the depth of these things, so I'm just going to take them in. And she's looking pretty balanced now. Just sort this symmetry issue out of the hair. Just want to take some of that symmetry out of it. So I'm just going to go back to the cracks. The point when symmetry is going to be most noticeable on the model, by the way, is in the middle where the two symmetrical bits meet. So if you want to break symmetry without breaking all of the symmetry, the middle is a good place to start. At some point now I'm going to have to join the head to the neck and blend that joint up, because that's a little bit jarring there. Just going to move the hair down a touch. Okay. Yeah, symmetry is one of those things. I do use it a lot, but I like to kind of have the asymmetry as well, just to give it a little bit of interest. But also with the if you have symmetry on all the time, the end model looks unnatural. So even a face isn't perfectly symmetrical. If you ever take a photograph of yourself, cut the photograph in half and then flip it over, it just looks so weird. It's just ridiculous. But it's good to remove that symmetry a little bit and kind of work freehand sometimes. But you're right, leaving symmetry on all the time doubles how fast you work, doesn't it? It's doubles your work speed, but it does impact the end product. So. Right, random sphere getting dropped in. Let's bring it up, sling it onto a shoulder. I won't do the ponytail yet, because I'll do that once it's posed. This is going to be the bit of fur that's going under. Take my sphere, mash it around until I get a shape I like the look of. I think at the back I'm going to bring that about 2/3 of the way over. So this layer will be on top of a cape, so the cape will be underneath this. it about. Just want to roughly form a shape until I'm happy. And I'll show you how I'll do fur. Okay, needs freezing. Okay, so I've roughly formed a little fur bit to go around the shoulder. So the next thing to do, I'm going to carve some rough strands using the clay build-up tool, and this is nothing kind of, you know, you can work in layers here, so start on the outside, do a few little tufts. If you're looking at this thinking that doesn't look anything like fur, it won't. You don't want it to look like fur, is the truth of it. If it was like true scale, you wouldn't even have a texture here. So you're obviously exaggerating everything. Just going to come underneath and then just overlap the layers a little bit, so one layer goes over the top of the other one. Okay, now I'm going to polish that, and then I'm going to use Snakehook, which is it's like a movement tool, but it just drags, just pulls it a little bit out. I'm just going to grab the ends of some of these strands, I'm just going to yank them down and away from the thing. Direction's difficult with this, you have to kind of get used to it. You have to just move it around and pull until it goes the direction you want it to go in. If you're in a rush or a pinch, that actually, as a miniature, would probably pretty much do for fur. If you get a Hero Forge model, that's pretty much the level of fur you're going to get, I think. What I tend to do here now is I'll go back in with the oil cracks brush again. Put a few like strokes in different directions, inverted and right way round. Right way round. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? I'll put a few strands in going in different directions. And release that there, it just gives you a little bit of something for the dry brush to pick up when your ink washes. And it gives it a sense of movement as well, so if you're trying to get cheers Dale. Yeah, you do it just practice, mate. I'm sure you're the same with your illustration stuff. You pick up tricks, don't you, and tips and techniques and workflows, and refine it over years and years of practice. But I mean, that's all there is to do in fur. You don't really need to overcomplicate it. It's the one that irks me, that I see an awful lot. Yeah, mate. This video is going to be offline at the end. I'm going to download it and put it onto YouTube as well, so it'll be available anyway. So if you need to dash off and get out, mate, that's absolutely cool. I'm going to be wrapping it up in a minute anyway, because I'm absolutely starving. So I'm going to go and get some lunch with the wife. Hayley's up in the house doing some renders for us at the moment, so she very kindly bought me a cup of tea down here. But gonna have a bit of lunch with her. One of the perks of working together and having a nice, chilled lifestyle, working from home, and also not having the kids around. So there we go. We've got some fur texture in here now. I'm obviously going to have to do this again for the fur bit around the skirt, but no dramas. Didn't take too long. So one of the things you've got to be careful of if you're doing the fur as well, when you're pulling these bits out, is every one of these bits that's pointing downwards is going to need supporting. So you don't want to have loads of strands pointing straight down, especially not a lot of thin wisps, because they're just going to break off. I mean, with this, what you could do, if you have got loads of downwards pointing strands, when you come to support the model, you can flip it upside down, and then when you put it upside down, I was talking to Ross at Fohammer the other day about it at Chilcon. And he thought I was a weirdo originally, because he took a few of my models that I'd pre-supported and they were upside down, and then when he printed them he realised why I'd done it, and it was to make sure that he minimised the number of supports on the model, but also to make sure that the face, the front facing of the model doesn't get damaged. So you do what you've got to do, do you know what I mean? But obviously you can avoid that in the sculpting phase by bulking up your sculpt, or you could just live with it, do the supports. I find adjusting the sculpt the easier option. So we're looking for contrast here more than anything else in the fur texture. So it gives you a little bit of something else to work on the model. Okay, so there we go. Got a bit of fur. There'll be a cape going in. So it's not a big cape, just a little mini one. There we go, about that. So let's go for so what would you call this kind of cloak? Like, is it like a riding cloak? I don't know. A little miniature half shoulder kind of thing. One of the things okay, no worries, man. You take it easy and enjoy your dinner, Dio. Thanks for tuning in, man. Thanks for the awesome artwork as well. So here's one of the areas we're going to have to look at as well when we come to kind of get this model ready for printing. So under here, where we've got the back of the model and we've got the cape, we need to make sure that it's paintable. So you have to bring the cape in, and sometimes it's a little bit unnatural when you do it, but you know, you just kind of got to get on with it. So I'm going to bring the back of the model in. There we go. So this bit here now is make sure that the interior of the cape is pulled into the model. The outside doesn't need to, the outside needs to be straight. But I need to pull this in so that it doesn't create any pockets for the resin. Okay, so pretty happy with that. I'm just going to Dynamesh that and polish it up. And then I'm going to add a bit of detail. So I'm just going to bring that down now. And what I do here for capes, which works really nicely actually, I'm going to turn the intensity down to about 15. I'm going to turn the size right up. And then when I do this, I'm going to go, right, so I need to follow the curve of the arm round, because that arm's pretty, it's not yet actually. Let me get the arm where I need it to be, and then I'll do the sculpting. So, got body. So for clothes, first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to come and take the legs off, below the knee. Hide them to the hidden close holes, and that is fine, so we'll leave that as is. This is what I tend to do now, so you could do kind of like transpose master. I don't like doing that, I tend to merge it all together. Merge that down, merge that down, merge that, and that, and that. Yeah, let's have it on. Oh no, not the base. Right, so I've now got everything in one place. I'm just going to auto group so that I haven't got anything sharing polygroups. Okay, and I'm going to take the arm, brace and the hand. So we've got the hand, we've got the bracer, we've got everything contained. So now I'm just going to isolate that with masking everything else. Rotate it down and out a little bit. now I can adjust this down, move the cloak, make sure the cloak is touching her arm. I don't want a big gap behind it. As I've said before, I don't want any of these big like resin pockets, and I want it to be easy to paint, so removing these things now solves problems later. Okay, let's bring that off. So it solves problems, it prevents them. Fur, I'm just going to adjust, so move topological. Bring that so it conforms to the cape. Right, now with the cape, the intensity is low, size is large, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a, I don't know, I've got to turn it off. Really big sized. Now the trick here is when you press hard, it affects both sides of the mesh. So it goes straight through to the other side and it leaves a good crease fold thing for you. So do a nice bit of drapery. Cheers, Craven. Yeah, we do a nice bit of drapery here, and then what we're going to do is I'm just going to come to the top and do, again, just a little bit of interest, a little bit of extra detail. I'm just going to nick in, notch in to the top, and then I just want a little ridge coming across the arm there, just to give us a little bit of extra movement. Okay. And again, just, now that I've created all these folds, I've got to make sure that they don't do that there. See that little hole? So I'm just going to get an inflate brush in there. No, not there. Just further back. What I'm trying to do here, I just want to get the inflate brush so it's in the hole. I just want to fill that space. So do it here actually more effectively, but you've got to be careful to make sure it doesn't go through to the other side. Right, so there we go, that bit's filled. I've still got a bit of an issue here, I think, so I'm just going to just puff that up there. Okay, and we're good, so I just need to polish this little bit where I've got a bit of texture coming through from previous merges and things. Okay, bring that out, tuck it back in. So her cape is adjusted. Right, so head is, let's merge it together. So just making some alterations to the proportions, not proportions, the head, and I've got just the neck in line with that. So what I've got to start doing now is make sure the neck blends into where the head joins. So one of the next steps will be to bring the head in to the same mesh as the body, and then blend that joint in. Okay. There we go. And this arm's fine as it is, I think. Forward one, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the widget so it's right on the shoulder from the top angle, and from the front angle, and just double check the side angle. So that any rotations I make are starting at the shoulder joint, not anywhere else. So let's bring the arm forward, I think. So I want that kind of looking in the direction of the fireball. It's going to be that. Okay, so that's good for the arm position. I'm happy with that. I think I'm going to just need to just rotate the arm around a little bit here, so I don't want to do all of it. So it's going to rotate the shoulder in and just fiddle it around a little bit. Right, I just need to adjust this and this. I'm not going to bother fixing that messy mesh bit there because it's hidden inside the clothes. And again, like I said earlier, if you can't see it in the end product, don't make it, don't fix it, don't sculpt it, just leave it as it is. Drag that down because that's coming out of the mesh a little bit. Right, sorted. Okay. Now I need it down. I'm going to need it down a little bit just because once I've sculpted the fire in hand, it's going to end up obscuring her face from certain angles. And we don't want that. Okay, right. I think that is the point where I'm going to have to knock it on the head. Yep, we're going to end the stream here. I'm not going to do any more work on this figure in the meantime, so we'll pick this one up on Wednesday next week as well. So yeah, if you want to see the rest of the figure, I think I'll probably get her finished on the next stream, and then I'll just need to do a little make Griblet, the little imp. So if I have time on the next one, I'll get him done. Otherwise, he'll roll onto stream number 3. So during the next one, I'll post up a couple of pictures of the rest of the models that are going to be made, and I'll let you guys kind of have a little vote and decide which one gets done next. So yeah, thanks everyone who's dialed in and tuned in. Dialed in? How old am I? Thanks to everyone who's tuned in and kind of joined me for the stream. You know, I do this for a living and I still love it. I still love doing sculpting. I'd be sculpting if I wasn't being paid for it, so it's great stuff for me. But yeah, thank you to all of you who've joined in. If anybody's got any questions afterwards, fire away, and I'll pick them all up in the next stream. And otherwise, I'll see you all again next week. Cheers guys. Take care man. Bye.